Well, it can affect people in many different ways. Companies have said that rising workers' compensation medical costs are just out of control, and this will do much to rein some of those costs in. There will be benefit caps, a huge drop in medical payments to doctors and hospitals that treat injured workers, and it changes some of the standards for determining a worker's disability. We'll talk through it all with Doug Whitley. He's the president and CEO of the Illinois Chamber of Commerce, and also Antonio Romanucci of the law firm Romanucci and Blandin. Mr. Whitley, let me begin with you. Your organization calls it a good bill. Jerry Roper, your counterpart at the Chicagoland Chamber, he's, I guess, a bit more vociferous in applauding this. So just tell us in a nutshell, why is this good legislation?
Well, workers' compensation is an issue that's very related to bottom line costs for companies. And over the last 6 years, Illinois' standing relative to other states in the nation has changed dramatically, so that Illinois is commonly known as one of the highest cost states to employ people. So workers' compensation costs become a big issue when you're comparing multi-state environments. Obviously, one of the big issues that we've dealt with in Illinois over the last decade is the fact that we've lost over 600,000 jobs. And jobs and economic recovery is very important to our state. So one of the things that we set out to do was to talk about cost, whether it be high taxes. As you know, the General Assembly raised taxes in January on businesses, or the high cost of workers' compensation. What we've tried to do is simply say Illinois needs to get back into the mainstream, that is to be more comparable to the workers' compensation systems and costs that are experienced in other states, and not be such an outlier as we have long been.
I see, though, that even with the cuts that are now going to be going into law over the next couple of months, with the cuts in the fees that we pay hospitals and doctors, we are still among the highest in the nation for what we pay doctors and hospitals for work comp issues.
That's correct. And the governor's office in particular took the lead on talking about workers' comp rates being reduced. What all of our viewers and listeners need to appreciate is that workers' compensation is a work in progress. It only gets addressed in Illinois about every 5 years. The last time we dealt with workers' compensation was 2005. It is a cost that is clearly measurable. So yes, there'll be change. We won't know for some time yet to what degree this change actually reduces cost. I think some of the cost estimates are perhaps a little more generous than it's actually going to happen. But what is important is to send a strong signal that the state of Illinois is conscious of the cost of doing business in our state. The state of Illinois would like to improve the business climate in our state. We want businesses to invest and grow jobs in our state, and we will be cost competitive to others. And that will, I believe, continue to require us to continue to work on additional workers' compensation changes in future years. This is not a done deal. This is not a one and done. This is something that requires constant attention.
All right, it saves companies a lot of money. Mr. Romanucci, why is this bad for workers necessarily?
Well, I understand what Mr. Whitley is saying, but what's important to understand is that he's talking about the cost of business, the cost of doing business in Illinois, and what the price is to workers' comp to a particular industry or an employer. There are two avenues in which a business gets taxed, or in which they spend money on workers' comp. One of them is on the premium that they pay the insurance company for the workers' compensation insurance. Nobody ever discussed or brought up the fact about what they pay in terms of premiums. So when you look at reform, it seems that the reform always comes on the back of the injured worker in terms of minimizing or cutting the benefit to the injured worker. And let's not forget that workers' comp is already a compromised system. There are reduced benefits that are paid to injured employees in exchange for them not suing their employer. So we also need to look at the back end and as to what premiums those businesses are paying to the insurance companies. Nobody's asked to look at that reform. Nobody's talked about how much they are paying to the insurance companies and looking for them to share in the cost. Nobody is suggesting that no reform wasn't necessary. I think some reforms are good. We need to look at the system as a whole. Illinois does need to remain competitive when it does business, but we all have to share in that cost. And when you look at the medical reduction fee that was put in place, it was a 30% reduction to the doctors. They're carrying a big load on this right now. So the doctors are going to be even more compromised as to what sort of care they'll provide to injured workers, and hopefully we won't see good doctors not providing good care to the injured worker.
All right, we know that healthcare costs, that's the #1 increasing cost for not just businesses, but Americans in general, and this is one way to try to spread some of the pain around. Is it the best way? Do you have any thoughts yourself as you listen to this program tonight about how we can do this in a fair way? Our phone number is 877-358-2588. My name is Bill Mahler, and you're watching Politics Tonight here on CLTV.